Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. I'm excited to show you this video, this tutorial. In this video, I'm going to show you how to take this square chunk of wood and turn it into something that looks like this, a three-dimensional chess piece. Now stick with me, this is going to be an extremely detailed tutorial, and this machine is not designed to do three-dimensional stuff, but I'm going to show you how to trick that machine into doing it for you. Let's get right into it. Let's get started. In order to make this easier to understand when we do the programming, I want to show you the clamping fixture setup first. That way when I'm explaining it in the tutorial, you'll go, oh yeah, that's why he's doing what he's doing. So here is my clamping setup, and here's a piece that's in progress. The system here is quite simple. You're going to take this block of wood and you're going to create 4 individual relief carvings. One on this side, one on this side, one here when it carves, and one here when it carves. So how do we go about doing that when the machine will only do one side at a time? I'll show you that in the programming, but here the clamping fixture will show you the physical portion of this. Simple. What I did with the Shapeoko here, because I can't get enough clamping pressure that I want, I drilled straight through the Shapeoko to the bottom and the underside, and ran these bolts up through the bottom. Lifted the Shapeoko, pushed the bolts up through. This is simply a square piece of aluminum, 3/4 inches by 3/4 inches, and I CA glued a piece of very light sandpaper on there, very light grit, on the bottom to prevent slipping. So, take your block of wood and slide it in. Once it's in place against a horizontal fence and a vertical fence, they have to be true, they have to be perfectly 90 to each other. The way you do that is you bring your machine over with an end mill, and because this is MDF, before you put this fixture in place, you'll run your machine over till it touches here, doing this manually, till it touches on the corner, and then run it out that way, all while creating a perfect 90-degree angle in reference to your spindle. Put your 2 screws through the bottom, create your crossbar, and it doesn't have to be this fancy. It can be, one gentleman, in fact, I see that he used a spanner wrench that you remove blades from a grinder with, and he fashioned that into a clamp that works very well. Again, back to this, we raise up the bar, we slide this in place till it bottoms out on the bottom, and it's against on this side. This piece pushes against the side of your stock. Now, as you can see, while this is carving, there's not going to be anything left up here on the top when you're finished. So this is why this is important. This hits about here. This hits in here behind my line. And I'll explain that further when we get done with the programming. We'll come back out here and we'll do this. You lock this down simply. Make the carve on this side. Slide it out. Rotate it. Slide it back in. Lock it back down. And you begin your second, third, and fourth relief carving on the piece. Let's go into the shop that's not the shop, and we'll begin showing you how I do the actual programming of the machine to make this happen. One more thing, by the way, one thing that I do, it's kind of a insurance policy, is I run a line all the way around the stock at 3.5 inches, and I'll explain that when I get inside as well. And then I find center line on each face so that I can confirm that I haven't lost zero when the machine comes back over. We're not going to zero off the corner. We're not going to zero off these corners over in the center. We're actually going to move the origin to that position. And again, this is why I'm showing you this out here now. So when I show you in there, you'll understand. The reason behind that is so that the machine does not run into your clamping fixture in any way. It starts here and moves away when it's finished. It doesn't run over the corner and run over your clamp and then go that way. Let's get inside and let's start programming so I can show you the magic on how you do this. Okay, we're back in the shop that's not the shop, and I think you're going to want to get a piece of paper and a pen for this one because you're going to want to take notes. We'll wait. All right, so obviously we're going to use Carve software because it's the best, and we're going to start with a new model, but before we do that, we need to bring in, or we need to find the chess pieces. How do we go about finding chess pieces? We're going to go to a website, the one I used anyway, was called Thingiverse, and here it is right here. And we'll type in chess set and hit enter, and it'll bring up a multitude of chess pieces and chess sets that you can choose from. The go-to on these is the Egyptian chess set, and that's right here. And they're very symmetrical. They don't stick out beyond the bases very much, so it makes it a little easier to begin with. But as you get better at this, you can certainly pick these Legos and these guys over here if you choose to. So we would click on this, like so. It'll open up. We'll download the files. I've already done that. I'm not going to. We download the files to anything you choose. I named a file STL files, and I bring them into there. And then we go back to CarveCo. So we can minimize this, go back to CarveCo, and we will start our new model. Now recently I tried a little experiment with y'all when I did these tutorials, and I put myself down here in the bottom corner while I was doing these. And I think that it's just a personal thing, but I think that's too much of a distraction when you're trying to learn the programming. So we're not going to do that going forward. Let's open up a new model. And the new model in this case is going to be 1.75 inches wide by 9 inches tall. And speaking of stock, I got mine from the Jungle Store. Some people call it Amazon. I call it the Jungle Store. These are 2 inch by 2 inch, 18 inch long turning blanks. Now when you receive them, they're not going to be 2 inches by 2 inches. They're smaller than that. It's imperative. It's absolutely necessary that each dimension, each side is exactly the same. Hence the reason for cutting them down to 1 3/4 inches on each side with the table saw, and then whacking them in half to give me the 9-inch piece, which then gives me, out of the 18-inch piece, I get 2 pieces of stock to make the chess pieces with. I ordered 4 of those from the Jungle Store. That gives me 1 whole back row of chess pieces. You can do the math, get whatever species you like, mahogany, black walnut. They also have maple. Let's get back to the programming. We're going to move the origin to the center, and that's not where it's going to remain. As I said out in the shop, we're going to adjust this, and that'll be the next step we do. We're working in inches, and click OK. So we have the origin in the center now. I don't want it that far up. Now, to move the origin, you're going to go to Model. We go to Set Position. Your stock is 9 inches tall. You're going to put 1 in the y-axis and click OK, and that moves the origin to 3.5 where it belongs so that you don't run into your clamp. Now that we have the origin where we need it, we need to bring in the STL files. You'll go to Relief up here on the top, click Relief, drop down to Import, drop down to Import 3D Model. I've already opened up this screen, pulling it from the STL files. We'll do Undead Queen in this example. Click Open. And when she comes in here, it's going to be absolutely enormous. As you can see, it is. But the first thing we want to do is start to position the queen or the piece. We'll stop calling her the queen. We want to position the piece so that it's flat on its back. In order to do that, we come over to Rotate Model about an axis. And in the X, we'll put in 90 and click Apply. And it drops the piece on its back. We then want to drop the piece down onto the work surface. To do that, we click Center. We go over here and click Center the Model. That brings it back up vertical so that we get a better look at the piece. Now we need to size the piece, and I do that in the Z height distance, and we do that down here under Set Model Size. And I don't want the thing an entire 1.75 inches. I want room to carve and room for things to happen. So we're going to go 1.4 and click Apply. That shrunk it down a little bit. We'll hit Center again. That brings it back up. We'll continue to hit this box over here and keep bringing it back to a better perspective. So you can see that she's in the center of the work area. Here's our origin right here. We need to move the piece upward so that it's almost to the top of the work surface. If we click Center once more, that puts it on our work piece, on our work surface, I should say. As you can see, the hat is on the surface. This extends above the workpiece a little bit, so it's not going to be touching. Click this, bring it back. All right, we need to move the piece up. How do we do that? We go up here to Position, we go up here to Y, and we start putting in numbers. Let's put in Let's put in 4 and see where that takes us. Click apply. That's too high. She's off of the work surface. Let's do 3.5 and click apply. That's a little too low. Let's do 3.7 and see what that does. That's where we want it. The reason for that is when you're carving and it does this and it goes around to the last portion, you don't want the piece too low. You'll have a big chunk of wood that's got to break off and risk damaging your chess piece. So 3.7 works in this case. Let's adjust the Z down here one more time to 1.4. Carveco is so precise it keeps zeroing in on very, very precise numbers. We'll click apply. That gets us as close to a whole number as we can. Now what we need to do, I'm going to rotate this so you can see it easier. We need to take the piece and drop it down through the work area by 50%, half of the thickness of our desired piece. To do this, we know 1.4. Divide 1.4 by 2, and that will be negative 0.7. And click apply. And as you can see, it drops her through the surface. Half of it is on the back side, half of it is on the front. We'll go back to this box once more and click to recenter. Hold that down. Now we need to create a boundary around the piece. And that's done with an easy square tool. Hover over the corner until we get the crosshair out to the other crosshair and down. Now when we go to the bottom, we don't want to go past the piece on the bottom. We don't want to pass the base. We want our square to be just shy of being off of the piece once it's carved, like that. Let me zoom in. As you can see, the bottom of the square is above the base. And the reason for that is when we do the carve, if we don't have this above, it will cut the piece off from our stock and the piece will go flying. We want the carve to be attached to the base so that we can take it over to the bandsaw later and trim it loose. So we have our box. Let's make sure I did create it. Yes. So we're in good shape. Now we can start making the 4 individual files that we need to do the 4 independent pieces to this stock. This is basically going to be a tool. This screen is going to be a tool that we use to create those 4 individual relief carvings. To do this, we need to paste this piece down. All right, it's now pasted down. Do not close out this screen. Go up to File, Save As. We're going to call it Bad Queen Front, and I like to save to the desktop. It's just easier for me to locate my files when I'm doing this. We're going to call it Bad Queen Front and save. We're going to go back over here and click Undo. We are undoing the paste. We're going to need to rotate this piece to do the sides and the back. How do we do that? Very simply. We go to Y up here on rotating a model, and let's do the back next. So let's put in 180 degrees and click Apply. It spins her around so you can see the back, and if I rotate, you can see now the other half is through the bottom. We need to paste this down. Do not close out this screen. Go up to File, Save As. We're going to call it Bad Queen Back now. Save. Again, we're going to click the Undo button to undo the paste. We need to rotate 90 degrees this time to get one of the sides. Click Apply. We have the right side now. We need to paste that down. By now, I'm sure you're getting the gist of how we're doing this. We're going to save as right side. All of this will be on the desktop. Save. Undo to remove the paste. Now we're going to rotate her 180 degrees again so that we can do the other side. Paste it down once more. Do not close out this screen. Go to File. Save as Bad Queen Left. Save. And just because I'm funny about this, I am going to rotate it 90 degrees once more, but I didn't unpaste. There, I unpasted. Now I'll rotate it. so that I can turn it so that it's face up. There. Now we will have 4 individual files on the desktop that we can work from now to create the toolpaths. So if I minimize this, you can see there they are, bad queen front, left, right, and back. Now in Carveco, you have the ability to open up multiple screens of Carveco all at the same time. And that is just what we're going to do here. Let's start with bad queen front. We're going to double click on this and open it again. Looks very similar to the other one we have open, but I assure you it is different. So we're going to work with this one, and we're going to create some toolpaths now. If I open that one up again and hover over it, you can see we still have the Paste 3D model screen up on the previous one. On the one we have up now, we do not. To create toolpaths, you'll click on the box to highlight it. You'll click on Machine Relief Toolpath. We're not doing a whole relief, we're just doing selected vectors. As I said, we want to carve in here, not the entire thing, because it will cut the piece loose and run into your clamps. Select a finishing tool, and in this case it will be a 1/32 tapered ball nose. Select that. Open it again. Step over, very, very important. Step over is 0.004. It's going to be like watching paint dry, watching that finishing tool go across this piece. But I assure you, that is how you get the detail. And that is how you don't have to spend hours sanding. Step over 0.004, step down 0.1, feed rate 30 inches per minute, that's fine. Change the tool to tool number 2. Scroll down and click a roughing tool, which is end mill 1/8 inch. Select. Open it up once more. Adjust the feed rate to 50. At least that's what I prefer. Step over and step down, all that's fine. Let's go down and adjust our safe Z. I'll adjust that to 0.1. Let's go down and click and define material. Now there's something very important that's going to happen here, and I'm going to explain this, and it's a very important detail to this that I didn't realize in the beginning. I ruined about 5 pieces trying to do this, so I'm going to save you that hassle, I hope. We know our stock thickness is 1.75, I'm sorry. And as you can see now, our bottom offset is 1.04. 1.04993. When doing these pieces, we need to be working off of the very center of our stock. By that I mean we want that center line to be the center line of the edge of the piece. I may not be explaining that correctly. Trust me, that's what we're looking for. So we need a top offset. It's very important that you have a top offset. And how do we determine what that top offset is? Quite simply, we enter the material thickness up here. We see the bottom offset is 1.04993. As I said, you get out your calculator and you will subtract 1.04993 by half of what 1.75 is, which is 0.875, half of your stock thickness. And you will get a number of 0.17493. And now you can see your bottom offset is exactly halfway through the stock. I'm going to go over that again because it's very, very important. And I know this is taking a little bit to get through this tutorial, but I want to help you all do this the correct way. Stock thickness is 1.75. We must always work to the center. So we subtract whatever the bottom offset was by 8.75. That is our total right there. We enter it in the top, and that gives us a bottom offset of 0.875, or exactly center of the piece. We click OK. We now have toolpaths for the very front of this piece. We can name it front and calculate now. And one way you can tell that you're going to get enough detail is when this color across here is solid, showing you that nothing is being skipped. If your step over isn't close enough, you'll have striations as it goes across here, and you'll know that you're not close enough. We did calculate it. Let's minimize it. Right click on tool paths, simulate all tool paths. Let's see what we get. Patience is a virtue. That sure looks like the front of that queen to me. What's the back look like? Nothing, but as you can see, we're halfway into our stock, exactly as we want to be. So now you will save this tool path, save it to separate files. We're going to call it Bad Queen. Again, we're going to call it the same thing we called it before. Front. And we're going to save that. Close this out. Minimize this. Now we've done the front. Let's go do the back. Double click on that. Open it up. You'll go through the same process. You'll highlight the box. Relief carving toolpath. Selected vectors. Select a finishing tool. Again, that'll be a 1/32 tapered ball nose. Select that. Open it back up. Step over is correct. Feed rate's correct. We need to change it to tool number 2. This will all become repetitive now for each of the 4 individual sides. You'll do the same thing you did on the front. Select a roughing tool, which will be an 1/8 inch. Correct the safe Z height, which is 0.1, as always. Click to define the material. Material size is 1.75. We've already done the math here. We know that we need to put in 0.17494 to give us our midway point, or halfway through the stock, at 0.875. Click OK. Go down and give it a name. We'll call it the back. And we'll pick this up so we can calculate now. And we're patient while the green bar goes across. We can see we have a nice solid color going there. Close this out. Right click on the tool paths. Let's simulate all tool paths and see what we get in this case. And I'm going to bet we get the back of the queen, which we sure do. Now if we rotate this and you look at it, you say, well, where did the front go? The machine doesn't realize that you have already carved the front. Case in point, 4 separate relief carvings. The machine thinks you've only done this carve. It does not realize you've already carved the front. Which brings me to another point. The order in which you carve these. I prefer, and I've had the best luck, by carving the sides first. Right side or left, doesn't matter. Carve the right side. Flip it 180 degrees. Carve the left side. You'll use a roughing bit and a finishing bit on those. And when you do this, it creates what I can show you here in the shop that is the shop. And as you can see here, that is my point about working to the center. If you do this correctly and you do the sides first, this side first, that side first, you'll end up with paper thin in the center, and you won't need to run a roughing bit across. You won't need to do the roughing pass. What I do a lot of times is I'll come in and I'll sand that down so it's a little bit closer, so it's not standing so proud, and then start doing the finishing passes, and it'll bounce that little section right out and you'll have no seam there. Alright, so when you change over to your finishing bit, or actually when you start out, if I didn't say this inside, I'm going to say it out here, you have to use a probe. You can do the paper, but I highly recommend the probe. It's the most accurate. So this is another little trick. You haven't got anything here. When you put your probe in place, the probe wants to flop around, as you can see. You raise that machine up just a little bit. The trick to get around that, I found, is to take a simple wedge and put it in the back until it balances your plate so that it's not moving around. Once it balances, then you can do the normal probing process. And because this is a 1/32 ball end mill. The closest I can get to that is a 1/16 ball in carbide motion. So we're going to begin to probe just as normal. There we go. Now we're in good shape. And now we can just do the finishing passes, and it will continue to remove all of that center portion. Okay, everybody, I'm going to summarize what we did here, but before I get started doing that, I want to tell you something that I typically tell you at the beginning of the video, and that is, this is the way I program to complete these carves. There's probably 100 different ways, but this is how I do it. If you find a better way, have at it. Leave me a comment in the comments below telling me that maybe there's an easier way. All right, let's summarize. Let's sum this up. So, you got one block of wood. You're going to make 4 separate relief carvings that you're going to apply to this block of wood. You're going to use the first carving to one side. You're going to use another carving on another, and another, and another, etc., until you have created a 3-dimensional piece. Now, in the beginning, I said that you're going to turn your piece 4 times. That's incorrect. You're actually only going to turn your piece 3 times. And I recommend starting on the sides. If you do the sides, you'll use a roughing tool and a finishing tool on the sides. On the top and the back, you'll only need to use the finishing tool. So that's why it works out to do just the sides first. I said you would rotate 4. That's incorrect. You're only going to rotate 3 times. You're going to start on whatever surface you choose to be a side. You'll finish that carve. You'll turn the block 180 degrees. Do the second side. Turn the block 90. Do the face. Turn the block 90 again. And do the back. That's all there is to it. I highly recommend you get yourself a touch block if you don't have one. You can do it with the paper method, but it doesn't always work as well because it's just not as precise. What else can I tell you? This guy came out pretty good. We did finish him. Obviously, you can see that. I found that our bits got dull, so we stopped and we waited 2 days for new bits to come in. In that time, this piece shrunk a little bit, and it gave us just a small line, a small fraction of a line that I had to sand off. So I don't recommend when you start it, keep going. This is a very involved process if you're going to make a full set. This piece has roughly 8 hours of carving into it. So if you're going to do a piece that's got 32 pieces on it, you're going to be there for quite a while. You're going to be there probably for a month making just the pieces. It's a strong commitment, but stay tuned because we are going to complete this set and we're going to make an awesome board to put it on. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it. I sure hope you learned something. Give us a like. Subscribe, that always helps out the channel. And again, we'll catch you on the next one.